What is up, my beautiful, lovely fam? So today is the day that we dive into our studies of the Spanda Karikas. As I said in my last video, I've been starting to walk deeply into wanting to learn this ancient knowledge, this ancient wisdom that pervades from Kashmir Shaivism. So today we step into the Spanda Karikas. So what are the Spanda Karikas? What is the central idea of this text? Well, the central idea of this text is that reality itself is not static. Instead, it suggests that reality itself is alive. It pulsates, it vibrates, it moves with consciousness itself. The word spanda is often translated as vibration or pulsation or a divine throb, but it does not mean physical movement alone. It points out to something much subtler, a living dynamism within consciousness itself. So in the text, in the introductory, Jaydeva Singh really makes it a very clear point, and through the many authors of the Spanda Karikas, the author originally of the Spanda Karikas, it actually goes back to ancient India, a gentleman named Kalata, but there's been many people who've translated these texts, these verses, this poetry, if you will, into helping make it more understandable and more clear. Another individual was Semraja. He's somebody that we'll speak of occasionally in this. Jaydeva Singh is the guy who wrote this text, so you can also check out the text if you want to dive on in with me. But something very clear that Jaydeva Singh, Semraja, that they all are really trying to say is that the dynamism, the spanda itself, it inherently is a word of movement in Sanskrit, but spanda, when you're referring to the divine, is much more than movement. It's not something that moves from A to B. You know, much like in modern quantum mechanics, how we say that a particle is both existing and not existing at the same time. It's that force in between, the constant fluid motion in between. So what are the Spanda Karikas exactly? The Spanda Karikas are a collection of verses that are connected to the Shiva Sutras. Often it's seen as a sister text to the Shiva Sutras, and it hails from the tradition of Kashmir Shaivism. They are considered kind of a commentary or an expansion on the Shiva Sutras. I personally have not dove completely into the Shiva Sutras yet. I've read it, but I haven't fully digested it enough to kind of comment on how this is a sister text to the Shiva Sutras, but that is the next text that we will be jumping into, so stay present with me and we'll dive into this all together, right? So the Shiva Sutras, there's a strong emphasis on prakasha. Prakasha is the light of consciousness, but in the Spanda Karikas, there's an emphasis on vimarsha, which is self-awareness and living activity of consciousness itself. Remember again, that movement force, if you will. So together, these teachings point towards a vision of reality where consciousness is not itself cold or passive or detached. Consciousness, rather, is creative, it's alive, it's dynamic. And reality itself is not just something that exists. Reality is something that pulses with awareness. So what does spanda mean exactly? Well, as we covered, the word spanda literally means a throb, or a sense of a throb, or a pulsation, or a subtle movement. But as we were talking about, Jaydeva Singh explains that this word cannot be applied simply to the divine, because movement is not normal necessarily in understanding what divine is, because movement happens in time and space, and the supreme, or pure consciousness itself, is beyond space, beyond time. So spanda is not exactly physical motion, it's not psychological activity, it's not just emotion, it's not just thought, it's not just pleasure, pain, hunger, or desire. Spanda rather is the living pulse of consciousness itself. It is the creative vibration behind all experience. And it is the spiritual dynamism through which reality itself appears. Kind of cool, right? So this idea really stood out to me. Because in this view, the universe itself is not dead matter. It's not separate from consciousness. It's an expression of consciousness, just as we are an expression of consciousness, as many yogis would say, as many divine sages would say. We are an expression of consciousness itself. So a cool modern parallel, as I was saying with quantum mechanics, one thing I find fascinating here is that these ancient teachings describe the existence almost as a vibration, as a pulsation. And modern science talks about energy, frequency, vibration, and the expansion of the universe. And I'm not saying that science and these scriptures are saying the exact same thing, but it is interesting that this ancient tradition also describes reality itself as dynamic and alive and constantly expressing itself. The teaching is not that consciousness is somewhere far away. The teaching is rather that this living awareness is present in everything, in waking and dreaming and deep sleep and thought and emotion, in perception, in ordinary daily life. So the Spanda Karikas is divided by many authors into many different sections. Jaydeva Singh himself, he divides them into 4 separate sections, and we'll be, in this video, starting to cover the general sense of the sections, and then we'll dive deeper into the verses. So in the first section, it is called the Swarupa Spanda. And Spanda means the essential nature of Shiva. The first sections contain 25 verses. The main theme is the recognition of the Spanda principle within ourselves. It is the teaching that beneath all changing experiences, there's an unchanging awareness. Thoughts change, emotions change, sensations change, states of mind change, the body changes, the world changes, but the experiencer remains. There's something in us that knows every experience, something that is present in every state, something that is not reduced to any one thought, feeling, identity, or moment. The Spanda Karikas points us towards that deeper consciousness that pervades within us. So, what is the experiencer? Well, one of the ideas from this first section is that reality itself cannot be reduced to a single object. It is not just the physical world. It is not just the psychological mind. It is not even mere emptiness or void, because even the experience of the void requires an experiencer. Without the experiencer, even the experience of nothingness cannot be known. So the text points us back to the one who knows, the awareness behind the experience, the subject behind the object, the consciousness behind the deep movement of life.
Now, something interesting. This idea of the experiencer made me think of something from quantum mechanics called the double slit experiment. At the most fundamental level, light is made up of tiny units called photons. You can think of a photon as the smallest packet of light. Now, in this experiment, photons are fired through 2 tiny slits. When no measurement is made to detect which slit the photon passes through, the light behaves like a wave, creating an interference pattern. It's almost like moving through both slits at once. But when a measuring device is used to detect the path, which slit the photon actually goes through, that pattern disappears entirely, and the photon acts more like a particle. This is often referred to as the observer effect. But it's not about the person watching. It's about the measurement. The act of measuring or interacting with the system changes how it behaves. Now, I'm not saying that quantum mechanics proves that these texts are pointing to something, but there is an interesting parallel, you know? I can't help but notice those things. In both cases, there's this deep relationship between experience, observation, and reality itself, and it raises a powerful question. What is the role of the experiencer in shaping what is experienced?
In the first section, it also talks about 3 common states of experience: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. For most of us, awareness feels partial. We're aware in moments. We lose ourselves in thoughts. We get caught in emotion. We identify with the body, with the mind, with the story, the personality. But the awakened yogi recognizes that the Spanda principle exists throughout all states. In waking, consciousness appears with objects. In dreaming, consciousness appears with inner images. In deep sleep, where there are no objects, consciousness remains as pure awareness. So the teaching is that forms change, but the underlying consciousness itself does not disappear. Another powerful idea in this first section is the relationship between subject and object. The world appears as objects, things, people, thoughts, feelings, experiences, but the text says these changing objects are not separate from consciousness. They are expressions of it. Ordinary perception sees the world as separate from self, but an awakened yogi sees the world as a play of consciousness, as some would say in Kashmir Shaivism, or in Shaivism, or in Sanatan Dharma, or in Vedanta, whatever the innumerate terms that you want to call what Hinduism hails from, as Leela, the play of Leela, the play of this reality, the play of this life, the play of consciousness itself, which is a really cool concept to me. If you just look around and you see the play of everything, it's beautiful. You come to realize that everything that happens to us is really just the play of consciousness, and it's just us getting to experience and digest and learn and understand from all of this. It's just so fun. But I digress. So the forms are many, but the source is one. Now that is a huge idea, because the goal is not necessarily to escape the world. The goal is to recognize the deeper consciousness moving through the world, through ordinary life, through emotion, through perception, through everything. Why does this matter? What I personally find beautiful about this teaching is that it brings spirituality into a direct experience. It is not only about meditation with your eyes closed, but it is also about how you perceive life with your eyes open. You know? Can you recognize awareness in the middle of your daily life? Can you sense the subtle pulse of consciousness behind your thoughts? Can you remain connected to the deeper self even when these fluctuating emotions arise? Can you remember that beneath all movement there is stillness? And beneath all stillness, there's still a living pulse. That is what I feel this teaching is pointing towards. This pulse, this energy, this motion of consciousness. Now, I'm just beginning my study of the Spanda Karikas, so I'm not presenting this as someone who has mastered this text by any means. I'm approaching this as a student learning this alongside you, as someone who's reading, as someone who's reflecting, as someone who's meditating, who's trying to understand how these teachings apply to me, to real life, to you, to your real life, to us, to our real life, this experience together. But already I can see why these teachings have survived for centuries. There's something deeply powerful about the idea that consciousness itself is alive, that reality is not dead, that the divine is not distant, that the pulse of awareness is present here and now in every experience. That's cool, isn't it? I'm going to continue studying the Spanda Karikas as we move forward, and I'm going to continue sharing my reflections as we go. So if you're interested in meditation and consciousness and Kashmir Shaivism and tantra and the deeper nature of reality, come, study with me, and let's go on this beautiful journey together. I'll see you in the next video. Blessings.